In the eerie streets of Atlanta, Georgia in 2023, a man named Kyle fell victim to a horrifying phenomenon known as the zombie fungus. The Cordyceps unilateralis, a parasite that thrives on ants, had mutated and found a new host. Kyle's symptoms began subtly, a tickle in his throat, a mild headache, nothing too alarming. But within days, he was spiraling into madness. He started hearing voices, claiming the fungus was whispering secrets of the universe. Friends described him as a living corpse, his body racked with convulsions as he scratched at his skin, convinced the fungus was burrowing deeper. The infection left him a shell of his former self, trapped in a horrifying cycle of paranoia and decay. Fast forward to Brazil, 2024, and we meet Lisa, a seemingly healthy hiker who encountered a rare fungus while exploring the Amazon. Within hours, she was overtaken, her body becoming the host for a nightmare. Friends later found her, mouth frothing, eyes vacant, as fungal spores erupted from her, creating a sickening spectacle. The horror of these infections serves as a chilling reminder of nature's dark side, where life can turn into a ghastly struggle and death may be the least disturbing outcome. Imagine splashing in the warm waters of a Louisiana beach on a sunny summer day, the sound of laughter filling the air. But for one unsuspecting tourist in July 2019, this blissful escape turned into a nightmare. After a fun-filled day, a tiny cut on their leg from a beach volleyball game became a gateway for Vibrio vulnificus, a flesh-eating bacterium lurking in the water. Within hours, the leg turned red and swollen, as if a rabid crab was pinching it. The vacationer ignored the warning signs, thinking it was just a sunburn. But by the next morning, they were in the ER, writhing in agony. Doctors had to amputate the leg to save their life. Talk about a vacation souvenir you didn't ask for. Now shift gears to September 20, when a fisherman in the same waters sliced his hand while cleaning his catch. He thought, no biggie. But hours later, he too fell victim to this merciless bacteria. His hand swelled grotesquely, resembling a balloon at a clown convention. Doctors fought desperately, but in a tragic twist, they lost the battle. Both victims remind us, paradise can turn sinister in a heartbeat. Check that water, folks. In the sweltering heat of Florida, a 30-year-old man named Fabrizio was enjoying a blissful day at the local water park on August 1st, 2019. Little did he know, an unseen predator lurked in the warm waters, a brain-eating amoeba known as Naegleria fowleri. Just days later, Fabrizio began experiencing severe headaches, fever, and an insatiable thirst for water that no amount could quench. Doctors initially mistook his symptoms for a common illness, but as his condition worsened, the truth revealed itself, a relentless invasion of his brain. Within a week, Fabrizio's body was a battleground, fighting a war it could not win. Friends and family watched in horror as he succumbed to seizures and confusion, a mere shell of the man who had splashed joyfully in the water. The amoeba, feasting on his neurons, left him unrecognizable, finally claiming his life on August 8th. The world was left with a savage reminder of nature's cruelty. Fast forward to 2020, another victim, a young boy named Zachary, fell prey to the same fate in a Louisiana lake. In an instant, a simple swim spiraled into a nightmare as the amoeba unleashed its deadly assault. Zachary's once vibrant laughter was silenced, and the community grieved a heartbreaking loss to an invisible menace. In July 2021, near the dense jungles of Madagascar, residents of a small village found themselves in a nightmare straight out of a horror film. An outbreak of a virulent fungus, known for its deadly spores, began infecting the locals. Symptoms started innocuously, an itch, a cough, but soon escalated to violent convulsions, skin lesions, and ultimately a gruesome demise. Families watched helplessly as their loved ones writhed in agony, the fungal infection spreading like wildfire. The local hospital, overwhelmed, turned into a makeshift morgue as the body count climbed rapidly. It was a scene of chaos and despair, a macabre reminder of nature's cruelty. Fast forward to March 2022, another village fell victim to the same merciless fungus. This time it coated the trees, releasing spores that floated into the air, infecting anyone who inhaled them. People collapsed in the streets, their bodies turning limp as the fungus took complete control. What was once a tranquil rural community became a ghost town, haunted by the shadows of those who succumbed to the horrific infection. Nature's wrath had unleashed chaos, leaving behind an unsettling legacy of despair. In a remote village in Brazil on December 15, 2019, an unsuspecting farmer, João, unknowingly welcomed doom when a triatomine bug, a tiny harbinger of death, bit him. This seemingly innocent insect carried the Trypanosoma cruzi parasite, the culprit behind the Chagas disease. Within weeks, João began experiencing fatigue, swelling, and fever. His body, once a vessel of life, became a battleground as the parasite wreaked havoc, multiplying like a horror film monster. As days turned to weeks, his heart, the very engine of his being, started to fail, pounded by relentless arrhythmias. João's dreams of harvest turned into nightmares of despair. Friends and family watched helplessly as he lost weight, strength, and sanity. The once vibrant man lay emaciated, a shell of his former self. The local clinic, unequipped for such a relentless foe, could only provide painkillers and hollow reassurances. Finally, in the dead of night, João succumbed. He died not as a hero, but as a statistic, a grim reminder of the lurking dangers in our world. His tragic end illuminated the dark side of rural life, where parasites thrive in silence, waiting for their next victim. In the summer of 2021, an unassuming swamp in Louisiana became the backdrop for a deadly encounter. This isn't your average marshland, it's a breeding ground for dangers unseen. Local residents began reporting flu-like symptoms, but what lay beneath was far worse. A rare virus lurking in the water spread rapidly. One evening, as Sarah, a mother of 3, waded through the murky water, she was blissfully unaware of her impending doom. Within hours, she was convulsing, her body succumbing to the insidious virus that attacked her nervous system. By morning, she was gone, leaving behind a family shattered by the horrors of nature's wrath. The second half of this grim tale unfolds in Brazil, where a parasitic invasion led to chaos. An unsuspecting fisherman named Pedro ventured into the swamp, eager for a catch. Instead, he caught a deadly parasite that turned his body into a battleground. As the parasite feasted on his insides, Pedro's screams echoed through the mangroves. Friends watched helplessly as he writhed in agony, his fate sealed by the very waters that once promised sustenance. Swamps may seem like a peaceful escape, but they hold secrets darker than the depths of their muddy waters. In the summer of 2017, a horrifying outbreak of Vibrio vulnificus struck Louisiana's coastal waters, claiming lives with terrifying speed. One such victim, a 78-year-old man, entered a local hospital with a seemingly innocuous cut on his leg after fishing. Within hours, his skin began to rot, revealing the gruesome truth. This flesh-eating bacterium was feasting on him from the inside out. By the time doctors intervened, amputation was his only hope, but the bacteria had already spread beyond their control. He succumbed to the infection, his body a mere shell of its former self, leaving behind a haunting reminder of nature's cruelty. In another case, a young woman wading through the waters of Lake Pontchartrain developed a blister that quickly morphed into a gaping, festering wound. Her screams echoed in the emergency room, but the medical staff could do little against the relentless advance of this minuscule monster. Her life ended, the bacteria having turned her flesh into a grotesque canvas of necrosis. These tragedies paint a chilling picture of the fragility of life against a hidden, microscopic terror lurking in the waters. In August 2003, the serene setting of the Vai Festival in England transformed into a nightmare as attendees unknowingly came into contact with a deadly strain of Legionnaire's disease. Over 100 people fell gravely ill, and the onset was swift and merciless. It started with a cough, a fever, and an overwhelming sense of dread as the bacteria lurked in the festival's cooling towers. The unsuspecting festival goers, exhilarated by music, were soon battling for their lives. Symptoms escalated rapidly. Some victims found themselves gasping for breath, while others were consumed by internal chaos as their organs began to shut down. Local hospitals struggled to cope with the influx, resembling a scene from a horror movie rather than a joyous celebration. The irony? A festival celebrating life had become a harrowing tale of death and disease. But the story doesn't end there. As health officials raced against time to trace the outbreak, the shocking reality of improperly maintained water systems came to light. This incident serves as a grim reminder of the lurking dangers in even the most festive environments, highlighting the thin line between joy and tragedy. On April 15th, 2021, in a desolate stretch of Highway 50, a couple decided to hit the roads for a spontaneous getaway. Little did they know, they picked up a hitchhiker infected with a rare virus. Within hours, violent tremors shook their car as he succumbed to a fever, his skin erupting in blisters like a grotesque map of despair. The couple, too late to realize the horror, felt their bodies begin to ache as if the virus was creeping through their veins, plotting their demise. By the time they reached the nearest town, both were unrecognizable, writhing in agony. The hitchhiker, grinning through pain, coughed blood, marking the car as a tomb on wheels. Fast forward to June 5th, 2022, a backpacker in the Amazon rainforest encountered a parasite that took his body hostage. He wandered off the trail, laughing manically, only to be found days later, a shell of his former self. His body was a canvas of decay, infested with larvae, a morbid spectacle of nature's cruelty. Medical teams rushed him to a hospital, but his cries echoed through the wards, a haunting reminder of the parasite's triumph. In both cases, what began as a thrilling adventure ended in tragic horror, showcasing nature's darkest side. On August 12th, 2020, the once vibrant Aronson Festival in New York transformed into a nightmare as a mysterious virus infiltrated the joyful crowd. Within hours, attendees began collapsing, their laughter replaced by screams of terror. The unsuspecting revelers, who had embraced the festivities, were now grappling with violent symptoms, high fevers, uncontrollable shaking, and a pain that felt like 1,000 needles piercing their skin. Health officials were baffled. No clear source could be identified, and the festival grounds became a desperate battleground against an unseen enemy. Paramedics rushed in, but with every passing moment, the situation worsened. The virus was merciless. It spread like wildfire, claiming lives before anyone could understand its nature. In the chaos, panic ensued. Some tried to flee, believing they could escape the invisible death lurking around them. But alas, the virus had no concern for their hopes. By the end of the night, the festival that promised joy had become a grim monument to the fragility of life, leaving behind haunting memories, a rising body count, and a chilling reminder. Nature's wrath can strike when least expected. In June 2024, Paris transformed into a scene of feline horror as an inexplicable disease swept through the city. Dubbed the Paws site of catastrophe, this disease began with an unusual lethargy, quickly escalating into violent fits of uncontrollable scratching. Cats, once a charming part of the Parisian landscape, were rendered mere shadows of their former selves. Owners watched helplessly as their beloved pets devolved into manic, hairless creatures, clawing at their own skin as if trying to escape a nightmare. The disease spread like wildfire, leaping from one unsuspecting cat to another without mercy. Vets were baffled, and rumors ran rampant. Some claimed it was a government experiment gone wrong. Others whispered of a supernatural curse. Each day brought grim news. Countless cats succumbed to the ailment, their once vibrant lives extinguished in a frenzy of despair. Streets echoed with the wails of grieving owners, while local shelters overflowed with the afflicted. The once proud city was now a chilling testament to the fragility of life and the absurdity of fate, where the very creatures that brought joy became harbingers of catastrophe. In the heart of a forgotten city on a dreary day in early April 2024, a shadow fell over the stray dog population. An insidious virus, dubbed the Plague of Paws, began its gruesome march. This was no ordinary illness. It was a death sentence wrapped in a cute fur coat. The virus unleashed a nightmarish fever, turning the once playful strays into trembling husks of their former selves. Their eyes glazed over, they roamed the streets, howling in agony as the disease wreaked havoc on their bodies. Paws disintegrated, leaving only bloody stumps as they struggled to run, searching for relief that would never come. Muffled cries echoed through the alleys as they succumbed one by one. Victims of a merciless fate, the city, previously a haven for these abandoned souls, transformed into a graveyard of fur and bones. People watched in horror, torn between sympathy and disgust, as the stench of decay filled the air. This was nature's cruel joke. Dogs, often seen as man's best friend, now became harbingers of despair. The plague of paws didn't just claim lives. It shattered the illusion of innocence, reminding the world that sometimes the most innocent creatures face the most brutal realities. It was Halloween night, October 31st, 2022, in a quiet Ohio suburb that turned into a scene of horror. A group of friends, high on candy-induced joy, gathered for what they thought would be a festive celebration. Little did they know, one friend had an extreme nut allergy. Amidst the laughter, a rogue peanut butter cup made its way into the bowl. Within minutes, the unsuspecting friend took a bite, and chaos ensued. As if possessed, he began gasping for air, his throat constricting like a noose. Paramedics arrived only to witness the macabre spectacle of a once joyous gathering transformed into a frantic life-or-death race. The festive decorations now served as a haunting reminder of the night's dark twist. Fast forward to 2023 in Cincinnati, where a Halloween party took a gruesome turn. A home-baked pie, filled with hidden nuts, became the weapon of choice. Guests cheered as slices were served, but laughter soon turned to horror when one guest collapsed, clutching his throat. The room froze, the festive spirit shattered, as the grim reapers seemed to dance amidst the candy corn. These chilling tales remind us, allergies aren't jokes. They can turn frightful fun into fatal consequences. On June 12, 2021, at an idyllic lakeside venue in Michigan, joy turned to horror as guests gathered to celebrate the union of Emily and Jake. The sun shone brightly, but beneath the surface, a dairy disaster brewed. The couple's extravagant wedding cake, a towering masterpiece, was crafted with rich, creamy layers. Little did they know, one guest, Sarah, had a severe dairy allergy. As the cake was cut, laughter filled the air, unaware of the impending doom. With the first slice served, Sarah took a bite, her face twisting from delight to sheer panic. Within moments, her throat constricted like a vice, air escaping her lungs in gasps. Chaos erupted as she collapsed, her body thrashing like a fish out of water. Emergency responders rushed in, but the party atmosphere shattered like the delicate cake. Only hours earlier, vows were exchanged. Now they were faced with tragedy. The joyous celebration transformed into a scene of frantic desperation, a dark reminder that love can swiftly turn to loss. The wedding cake, meant to symbolize sweetness, became a chilling emblem of life's fragility and the silent dangers lurking within every bite. On a fateful evening at Joe's Diner in Chicago, Illinois, on July 14, 2023, a seemingly innocent order of chicken satay unleashed absolute chaos. As Karen, a regular with a deadly peanut allergy, took her first bite, her joy turned into horror. The teriyaki sauce, unbeknownst to her, contained crushed peanuts. Within moments, Karen's throat constricted like a vice, her breath stolen as she gasped for air. The diner echoed with screams, the scent of panic mingling with fried food. Witnesses watched in shock as her face swelled grotesquely, resembling a balloon animal gone wrong. Despite frantic calls for help, Karen collapsed, her lifeless body hitting the floor with a thud. The gory specter of anaphylaxis had claimed another victim. Fast forward to September 22, 2023, at a trendy cafe in New York City, where a birthday celebration took a tragic turn. Mark, blissfully unaware of his gluten allergy, devoured a cake adorned with peanut butter frosting. He choked mid-laugh, eyes bulging as reality set in. Friends rushed to his side, but it was too late. Mark's face became a canvas of terror, a reminder of the dangers lurking in everyday food. The cake, once a symbol of joy, transformed into a deadly weapon, sealing Mark's fate before the candles were even blown out. In a small cafe in Seattle on April 15, 2021, a seemingly innocent peanut butter sandwich became a death trap. Sarah, a 28-year-old woman, took her first bite, blissfully unaware of the impending doom. Within minutes, her throat tightened like a noose, and she gasped for air, her face swelling grotesquely. The cafe filled with panic as her body convulsed violently, a desperate ballet of life and death. Paramedics arrived too late, and she was pronounced dead at the hospital, her final moments a haunting reminder of how quickly joy can turn to horror. Fast forward to October 9, 2022, at a birthday party in Dallas, where 12-year-old Jake unknowingly devoured a cake laced with peanut flour. The joyous laughter transformed into chaos as Jake's eyes bulged, and he clutched his stomach in agony. Friends watched in horror as he collapsed, the cake's sweetness now tainted with tragedy. Emergency responders rushed him to the ER, but the allergic reaction unleashed a storm inside him. Just 2 hours later, his life flickered out. In both cases, peanuts weren't just snacks. They were the grim reapers in a cruel masquerade. In July 2022, a Florida man named Jeff had a day like any other. He dove into the ocean, unaware that a lurking menace awaited him. Just days later, he experienced excruciating pain in his leg, swelling rapidly, and a darkening skin tone that would frighten even the bravest soul. Doctors diagnosed him with necrotizing fasciitis, a flesh-eating bacterial infection that travels like wildfire through tissue. Imagine the horror. One moment, you're swimming. The next, your body is a battleground. Jeff underwent surgery, yet the bacteria relentlessly gnawed at his flesh, as if taunting the surgeons. His leg was cut open, exposing raw muscle and sinew, a grotesque sight that would haunt anyone's dreams. As the infection spread, he faced a choice: lose his leg or risk losing his life. With stark determination, he fought back. Antibiotics screamed through his veins, and doctors battled fiercely. Weeks later, Jeff emerged, forever changed. His leg was a mangled shadow of its former self, but he was alive, a testament to resilience against a merciless enemy. His story echoes a chilling reminder. Nature can be brutal, and sometimes the ocean holds more than just beauty beneath its waves. On March 12, 2022, in a small clinic in rural Oregon, a seemingly routine blood donation turned into a nightmare. Sarah, a local nurse, was performing her usual duties when she noticed something strange during a blood draw. As she prepared to collect blood from a volunteer, she saw tiny, writhing creatures nestled in the crook of the donor's arm. Panic set in as the realization hit. Leeches had infiltrated the bloodstream of a patient. The unsuspecting donor had recently bathed in a nearby lake, where these blood-sucking parasites thrived. Horrified, Sarah attempted to remove the leeches, but their grip was tenacious. They feasted on the donor's blood, causing massive internal bleeding. Within hours, the once vibrant volunteer was pale and shaky, struggling for life. The leeches not only drained blood but released anticoagulants, turning the donation into a horror show. The gruesome scene unfolded with the donor writhing in agony as medical professionals fought to save him. In a twisted turn, the leeches survived the procedure, leaving a chilling reminder of nature's deadly surprises lurking in the most unsuspecting places. In a quiet suburb of New Jersey on March 15, 2021, a seemingly healthy man named Tom stumbled upon a bizarre fungal outbreak while hiking. Unbeknownst to him, this was no ordinary fungus. It was a lethal species known for its horrifying ability to invade and consume human flesh from the inside out. What began as a curious encounter quickly spiraled into a grotesque nightmare. Within days, Tom developed unusual symptoms: persistent headaches, fever, and a strange, insatiable itch beneath his skin. Doctors initially dismissed it as allergies, but his condition worsened, transforming his body into a battleground. As the days passed, the fungus spread like wildfire, slowly eating through his tissues and organs. Think horror movie meets medical disaster, but it was all too real. His skin erupted in ghastly lesions, resembling a scene from a sci-fi film, and he became a shell of his former self. Friends and family could only watch in horror as he succumbed, his body becoming a host for the very organism that would ultimately claim his life. The irony? Nature's tiny killer was not just a monster, it was a reminder of how fragile life truly is. In late 2016, a quiet campus in the United States became the epicenter of a menacing outbreak. It all began in November when a 21-year-old student suddenly fell gravely ill. His symptoms escalated from a mild headache to fever and confusion within hours. A once vibrant life was reduced to a shell, consumed by a ruthless invader. The culprit? Neisseria meningitis, a pathogen that thrived in the shadows. Days later, this young man succumbed to meningitis, sparking panic across campus. As officials scrambled to contain the outbreak, more students began to fall prey. The medical teams were blindsided. Meningitis was a silent hunter, striking swiftly and indiscriminately. The news spread like wildfire. Students were seen racing to receive vaccinations, but it was too late for some. One life lost turned into three, and with each death, fear gripped the community. Parents were left clutching their phones, whispering prayers. Dark humor emerged amid the chaos. The irony of college life now included a deadly virus. What started as an ordinary semester transformed into a macabre reminder of mortality, illustrating how swiftly life can be snatched away by an invisible enemy. On June 15, 2023, in the bustling streets of San Francisco, an unsuspecting tech worker, Mark, unknowingly brushed against history. He had just returned from a hiking trip in the Sierra Nevada, where he encountered a seemingly harmless rodent. Little did he know that rodent was a carrier of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for the infamous Black Death. Days passed. Mark experienced flu-like symptoms and dismissed them as fatigue. Then the fever hit, intense and unyielding. His body was no longer his own. It was a battleground. As he hallucinated, imagining the ghostly figures of medieval plague doctors hovering over him, his skin erupted in painful buboes, grotesque and dark. Friends found him writhing in agony, a modern man caught in an ancient curse. Despite frantic hospital visits, the doctors were stumped. By the time they identified the plague, it was too late. The bacteria unleashed its wrath, consuming him from the inside out. His once promising tech career ended in chaos, a grim reminder that some shadows of history are far from extinguished, lurking ever closer in our crowded modern lives. In July 2018, a family from North Carolina was enjoying a sunny day at a beach in Florida when tragedy struck. After wading into the warm waters, one of the children accidentally scraped his foot on a jagged shell. Little did they know, this small injury would unleash a living nightmare. Within 24 hours, the child developed a fever, and his foot began to swell dramatically, turning an alarming shade of crimson. The parents, initially dismissing it as a minor beach mishap, rushed him to the hospital. But time was not on their side. Doctors identified the culprit, Vibrio vulnificus, a flesh-eating bacterium lurking in coastal waters, particularly in the summer months. As the infection spread, it began devouring flesh, leaving behind a ghastly trail of necrosis. In desperate attempts to save him, the medical team resorted to aggressive treatments, but they were fighting a losing battle. The child's health deteriorated rapidly, and within days, what started as a vacation turned into a horrific tragedy. The beach, once a paradise, became a graveyard for innocence, reminding us of nature's terrifying unpredictability. In the quiet town of Marlow, Virginia, on a humid August day in 2021, a seemingly innocuous stroll through the woods turned sinister. John, a local farmer with a love for nature, unwittingly disturbed a thriving nest of parasitic larvae. These tiny invaders, known as the creeping crawler, burrowed into his skin without a trace, feasting on his flesh and wreaking havoc. As days passed, John felt an unsettling itch, dismissing it as a mere bug bite. But soon his skin erupted in horrifying welts, pulsating with infection. The creeping horror escalated. John's legs swelled grotesquely, turning a ghastly shade of purple. Friends joked, "Looks like you're growing an extra limb." But there was nothing funny about the festering mass. In a frantic rush, he sought medical help, where doctors, baffled by the rare parasite, could only watch as it consumed him from within. By the time treatments began, it was too late. The infection spread like wildfire, leading to septic shock. Just days later, John succumbed, leaving behind a chilling reminder. Nature can be a deadly neighbor. Beware the silent predators lurking in the shadows. In March 1993, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, became the unsuspecting epicenter of a chilling health crisis. A cloud of Cryptosporidium, a microscopic parasite, infiltrated the city's water supply, leading to one of the largest waterborne outbreaks in U.S. history. Over 400,000 residents were affected, with symptoms ranging from severe diarrhea to debilitating cramps, leaving people gasping for relief. Hospitals overflowed as the sickened population sought help, many suffering from excruciating dehydration. The parasite, resistant to chlorine, thrived in the city's water, revealing a shocking vulnerability in public health infrastructure. Doctors were bewildered, faced with the grim reality, a parasite that turned everyday life into a nightmare. Affected individuals described the horror, explosive diarrhea that struck without warning, relentless and unforgiving. Some faced long-term health issues, while others succumbed to the onslaught of a parasite most had never heard of. Fear gripped the city as people struggled to comprehend how a creature so small could wreak such havoc. In the end, Milwaukee learned a brutal lesson. Sometimes the smallest threats can lead to the greatest tragedies. On a bleak day in March 2021, the small town of Millville, tucked away in the Midwest, faced an unimaginable horror. A mysterious virus, later dubbed the Reaper, began infecting residents with alarming speed. It started with harmless flu-like symptoms, just a cough, a runny nose, and a sense of dread creeping in. But soon it morphed into a grotesque spectacle. Within days, individuals transformed into living corpses, their bodies consumed by a fever that boiled their insides. Eyes bulging, skin turning an ashen gray. The infected clawed at their throats, gasping for air, while their loved ones could only watch in horror. Local hospitals became war zones, overflowing with the dying. In the midst of this chaos, Jerry Thompson, a 45-year-old mechanic, succumbed to the virus in a particularly gruesome fashion. He writhed in agony, foam oozing from his lips, as if the virus was mocking his last breaths. In an ironic twist, his final words were a joke about needing a mechanic for his failing body. The Reaper didn't stop there. It claimed dozens before authorities could even comprehend the nightmare unfolding. Millville would never again be the same, forever haunted by the shadows of a virus that turned the mundane into the macabre. On March 12, 2022, in room 317 of St. Michael's Hospital, a seemingly innocuous cough echoed through the sterile white walls. It belonged to Frank, a 42-year-old transfer patient. Little did anyone know he was the unwitting host of a malicious virus, a twisted creation lurking in the shadows of modern medicine. Within hours, Frank transformed from a man with a simple cold to a grotesque shell of agony, his body succumbing to the parasite's insatiable hunger. Nurses reported a foul odor emanating from his room, a sickening blend of decay and desperation. As the night deepened, Frank's skin erupted in lesions, oozing a thick black sludge that defied explanation. Panic spread like wildfire through the hospital corridors. Doctors rushed in, but the virus was like a cunning puppet master, slipping through their fingers as it wreaked havoc. One by one, health workers contracted the parasite, their bodies convulsing in a macabre dance of death. By dawn, room 317 was a tomb, echoing with the cries of those lost. The virus vanished as mysteriously as it arrived, leaving only whispers of its deadly ballet in the halls of St. Michael's, a haunting reminder of how swiftly life can turn to horror. In the heart of the Amazon rainforest on July 7, 2021, a group of unsuspecting researchers stumbled upon a horrifying phenomenon. As they trekked deeper into the lush green abyss, an unseen killer lurked in the underbrush, a deadly fungus known as Ophiocordyceps unilateralis that invades its victims with ruthless efficiency. The fungus latched onto an unsuspecting ant, slowly taking control of its nervous system, compelling it to climb high into the canopy. There, the fungus bloomed violently, releasing spores that rained down upon the bewildered researchers below, infecting them one by one. It was a grotesque transformation, convulsions, hallucinations, and ultimately a death wrought by an insatiable hunger for organic matter. On the same day, in a remote village, a child played innocently in the dirt, unwittingly stirring up spores from the ground. Soon the child was racked with fever and delirium, succumbing within days as the fungus turned their body into a macabre host. The rainforest, once a sanctuary, became a chilling graveyard, echoing the horrors of nature's darkest secrets. In the murky depths of the Louisiana swamps, on July 15, 2022, a bizarre and deadly event unfolded. A couple, seeking adventure, unknowingly waded into contaminated waters, teeming with a newly discovered parasitic organism. Within hours, they were struck by a relentless fever, hallucinations, and excruciating pain. As the sun set, their bodies began to betray them, as the parasite aggressively invaded their systems, causing grotesque swelling and disfigurement. By dawn, they were unrecognizable, their skin breaking out in ghastly lesions as the parasite feasted on their flesh, leaving behind decaying remains. In this nightmare scenario, their cries echoed through the swamp, a haunting symphony of despair. Just weeks later, on August 1st, 2022, a seasoned fisherman fell prey to the same sinister organism. After a routine catch, he experienced violent convulsions and a terrifying transformation, becoming a vessel for the parasite. His once strong body became a grotesque puppet strings pulled by unseen forces. This horrific tale serves as a grim reminder that nature has teeth, and sometimes they sink deep, with fatal consequences. The swamp is not just a home, it's a graveyard for the unwary. In 2019, a quiet hospital in the heart of Ohio became a breeding ground for a nightmare. As summer turned to fall, a new strain of Candida auris erupted, engulfing patients and staff alike. It started with a seemingly innocent cough, but within days the victims were spiraling into chaos. The fungus, resistant to treatment, invaded bloodstream and lungs, leading to horrifying scenes. Patients gasping for breath, their skin turning ghostly pale as if drained of life. The grotesque irony? The suffering was often mistaken for typical flu symptoms, allowing the infection to spread like wildfire. Families stood helpless, clutching their loved ones, as doctors could only watch the relentless advance of the infection, knowing they were outmatched. The hospital turned into a scene from a horror film, with rooms sealed off and staff clad in protective gear, looking more like astronauts than caregivers. Meanwhile, the death toll climbed. Each loss felt like a cruel punchline to a dark joke. The cruel twist? The fungus often thrived in the most vulnerable, those already fighting battles inside their own bodies. The outbreak was a grim reminder of nature's power, where even the tiniest invaders could topple giants. In July 2018 at Cape Cod, Massachusetts, a seemingly innocent swim turned into a nightmare. A swimmer waded into the waters, only to feel a sudden, searing pain in his leg. Within hours, his skin began to blister, revealing a grotesque decay that seemed to feast on him. By the time he reached the hospital, the flesh-eating bacteria had transformed his leg into a gory spectacle of rotting tissue. Amputation was the only option to save his life, but the bacteria had already wreaked havoc in his bloodstream. The poor soul became a chilling statistic, a reminder that paradise can turn deadly in an instant. Now imagine smiling beachgoers unaware that the waters held dark secrets, ready to strike. Fast forward to 2020 in Florida, where a fisherman succumbed to a similar fate. After a day of catching the sun and fish, he noticed a small cut on his hand. Within days, the cut blossomed into a festering wound, devouring his flesh. The diagnosis was swift and merciless: Vibrio vulnificus. Friends watched helplessly as he deteriorated, his body a canvas of horror. Despite aggressive treatment, he slipped away, leaving behind nothing but a haunting tale of a beautiful day turned grotesque, a true seaside horror. On a sunny day in July 2019, a family picnic at the serene shores of a popular lake in Florida turned into a gruesome nightmare. What began as laughter and joy soon escalated into chaos when one family member, unaware of the lurking danger, stepped into the murky water. The culprit? A deadly strain of flesh-eating bacteria known as Vibrio vulnificus. Within mere hours, the infection spread like wildfire. As if an evil spell had been cast, the family's laughter morphed into cries of despair. The affected individual, initially feeling a tickle in the leg, watched in horror as their skin began to turn black, bubbling grotesquely as if a sinister chef was preparing a revolting dish. Medical intervention was frantic but too late. Surgeons desperately fought against time, amputating limbs in a futile attempt to save a life already slipping through their fingers. The bacteria feasted, claiming its meal with a savage efficiency that left the family shattered. This wasn't just a picnic. It was a grotesque reminder of nature's darker side, where a simple splash could lead to a rapid descent into terror. A day of fun turned into a tragic tale of loss and horror. In 1347, the Black Death arrived in Europe, first landing in Messina, Sicily, where its carnage began. This deadly plague, caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, swept through cities like a merciless storm. As the infection spread, victims experienced fever, chills, and the telltale buboes, painful swellings that turned into festering wounds. Death came quickly, often within days, leaving behind a trail of bodies that rotted in the streets. Families turned on one another, abandoning loved ones in a grotesque apathy towards suffering. To many, the stench of death became a familiar perfume, a reminder that life hung by a thread, and every cough might signal the end. The plague was not just a disease, it was a societal collapse, a theater of horror where the audience was both captivated and repulsed as they watched their world unravel. The second wave came in 1361 with the plague returning anew, reinforcing its reputation as the ultimate executioner. Survivors were left to navigate a landscape of despair, with the shadow of death always looming, a grim reminder that in the end, the reaper always collects his due, with a chuckle in the face of humanity. On a seemingly ordinary night, June 14, 2022, in a cozy restaurant in New Orleans, a couple shared what they thought would be a romantic dinner. As they clinked glasses, they unknowingly welcomed a deadly parasite into their lives. Little did they know, a rare strain of Toxoplasma gondii was lurking in the beautifully presented seafood. Hours later, the woman Maria began to feel ill. Nausea morphed into violent vomiting, her body betraying her in a gruesome display. Her partner Mike dismissed it, blaming the oysters, but his laughter turned to horror when he too felt the parasite's wrath. By midnight, Maria lay twitching, her body fighting a war within. In an absurd twist of fate, Mike found himself paralyzed, eyes wide with terror as he realized what was happening. The lovebirds had become unwilling hosts to a horror story. The restaurant, now a scene of carnage, echoed with their final gasps. As paramedics arrived, it was too late. Their last kiss was a deadly embrace, leaving a chilling reminder. Sometimes love can be lethal, especially when parasites join the party. A date night turned into a grotesque tale of fatal consequences. On July 15, 1989, the small town of Brooksville experienced a harrowing outbreak that would haunt its residents forever. The local river, once a source of recreation, turned deadly. It began with a young boy, Timmy, who innocently splashed in the water, unaware of the lurking menace. Within days, he developed a fever so high it scorched his skin. Neighbors thought it was a common illness until they saw the boy convulsing, his body writhing like a fish out of water, eyes wide with terror. The hospital was overwhelmed with similar cases, all stemming from the same toxic river. Doctors, baffled and panicked, described a new strain of bacteria so aggressive it feasted on human flesh. As the week progressed, the fatalities mounted and panic spread through town like wildfire. Black humor erupted among the residents. "At least we'll be famous for something other than our pie contest," they joked, but it was no laughing matter. Corpses piled up in hastily assembled tents. Families huddled together, praying against the invisible killer lurking in their backyard. By the end of the month, Brooksville was a ghost town, echoing with the screams of those who dared to flirt with the poison. The river, now an omen, was forever tainted, a reminder of nature's brutal indifference. On March 11, 2003, Madrid became the epicenter of a horrifying outbreak as a deadly respiratory virus swept through the city like a thief in the night. This virus, a mutated strain of a common pathogen, displayed alarming virulence, infecting over 200 people in just days. The city, a bustling metropolis, was plunged into chaos as hospitals overflowed with patients gasping for air, their bodies failing under the relentless assault of the virus. Symptoms began innocuously with a cough and fever, but escalated rapidly into severe pneumonia, leading to excruciating respiratory failure. People were found collapsed on the streets, the very air around them turning toxic. Medical staff, overwhelmed and terrified, struggled to contain the situation. Black humor circulated among the populace, the dark joke that Madrid was becoming a breathing ground for the virus. By the time the outbreak was contained, more than 50 lives were lost, destroyed by a virus that seemed hell-bent on claiming its victims. The city's economy crumbled as fear gripped the people. Madrid, once alive with chatter, became eerily silent, echoing only the haunting memory of the virus that had turned their lives into a living nightmare. In 5400 BC, in a remote settlement in modern-day Bulgaria, a horrifying event unfolded. The villagers, unaware of the impending doom, became host to a lethal bacteria that would decimate their population. This deadly strain, possibly stemming from unsanitary living conditions and contaminated water, spread like wildfire. Symptoms erupted rapidly. Fever, debilitating aches, and gruesome sores ravaged their bodies. Imagine waking up to find your loved ones transformed into mere shells, writhing in pain, their flesh festering. Panic ensued as the villagers realized the horror they faced. Families fell apart, and the smell of death hung heavy in the air. Isolation became a cruel reality, with neighbors shunning the afflicted. As the infection spread, the once thriving community dwindled to a ghost town. Those who succumbed to the plague faced a fate worse than death. The bacteria consumed them from within, leaving only hollow corpses behind. This catastrophic event serves as a chilling reminder of nature's ruthless power and the humanity's vulnerability to microscopic horrors. Be grateful for the modern advancements that keep such ancient nightmares at bay. But remember, history is filled with chilling tales of terror. In 2005, a chilling disaster struck the silkworm industry in China, the heart of sericulture. Millions of silkworms were devastated by a bizarre parasite known as the Fusarium solani. Originating in the warm, humid conditions of the silk farms, this fungus infiltrated the silkworms, wreaking havoc on their delicate bodies. As farmers tended to their crops, they noticed a horrifying scene: silkworms writhing in agony, their bodies turning black as the fungus consumed them from within. By May 2005, reports emerged from the provinces of Jiangsu and Zhejiang detailing the catastrophic effects, with entire batches of silkworms collapsing, leaving farmers in despair. The parasite spread like wildfire, decimating silkworm populations and leading to a staggering economic fallout. Livelihoods were destroyed as silk production plummeted, resulting in losses exceeding millions. The once thriving industry became a graveyard of silkworms, highlighting the frailty of nature and the fine line between life and death. The Great Silkworm Plague remains a reminder of the unpredictable forces of nature, turning bountiful farms into scenes of horror and despair. In the spring of 1994, the United Kingdom faced a gruesome epidemic that sent chills down the spines of animal lovers everywhere. Rabbit hemorrhagic disease, RHD, a viral onslaught, emerged with terrifying speed, decimating rabbit populations across the nation. The virus, first identified in China, hit the UK with brutal force, causing severe internal bleeding and death within hours. In a matter of months, it was estimated that over 90% of wild rabbits in certain areas succumbed to this lethal pathogen. Imagine a once bustling meadow, now eerily silent, filled with the corpses of rabbits, their bodies bloated and lifeless, a grotesque spectacle of nature's fury. The government was forced into a shocking response, launching mass culling operations in a desperate bid to contain the outbreak. Farmers, horrified by the carnage, watched as their beloved pets and livestock were rounded up, leading to a tragic tableau of death. The scene was so extreme that it sparked debates on animal rights and the ethics of such drastic measures. RHD was not just a virus, it was a bloody reminder of nature's relentless cruelty, leaving a lasting scar on the landscape and its inhabitants. In August 2004, a bizarre wave of paranoia swept through a small town in the United States. Residents began reporting strange symptoms: anxiety, hallucinations, and even aggressive behavior. The culprit? Toxoplasma gondii, a parasite commonly found in cat feces. While most people may brush off this infection, its effects can be terrifying. It turns the innocent house cat into a biological weapon, capable of unleashing chaos on the unsuspecting public. The local authorities were baffled. Unsuspecting cat owners were unknowingly hosting this invisible menace. Two incidents stood out during this outbreak. A woman named Lisa, who after cleaning her cat's litter box, started to experience severe paranoia, convinced the neighbors were plotting against her. Her life spiraled into madness, leading to a tragic, violent confrontation. Then there was Tom, a seemingly normal man who suddenly developed uncontrollable urges, becoming aggressive and hostile to those around him. The parasite had taken over, leaving destruction in its wake. This bizarre outbreak served as a grim reminder that even our beloved pets could harbor deadly secrets, turning ordinary lives into nightmares. In a sinister twist of fate, on May 1st, 2007, in the small town of Huaraz, Peru, a young mountaineer named Julio suffered a horrific fate. Little did he know, he was hosting a ravenous tapeworm, a parasitic entity capable of wreaking unimaginable havoc inside its host. The tapeworm, Atania solium, was a result of consuming undercooked pork, a common culinary misstep. As days went by, Julio experienced relentless abdominal pain, but attributed it to climbing exhaustion. However, this pain was merely the tapeworm feasting on his insides. He rapidly lost weight, the parasite siphoning off nutrients, reducing him to a shadow of his former self. Doctors failed to diagnose him correctly, as parasites are often overlooked in outdoor enthusiasts. By the time they identified the tapeworm, it had grown to an alarming size, more than 10 feet long. The treatment seemed simple: medication to expel the parasite. But complications arose, leading to severe abdominal bleeding. Julio's body became a battleground as doctors fought to save him from the ravenous beast within. In a tragic turn, he succumbed to the infection, leaving behind chilling reminders of nature's dark side. On January 1918, a deadly influenza virus erupted in the trenches of World War I in Etaples, France. Soldiers, already weakened by war, became prime targets. This virus, unlike any before, was a relentless hunter, spreading rapidly through the crowded camps. By the spring of 1918, it had mutated into a terrifyingly lethal strain. Imagine coughing fits so violent they left victims gasping for breath, blood seeping from their noses, and bodies fevered with unimaginable pain. Hospitals overflowed, and doctors reported eerie scenes. Patients lined up, a macabre assembly awaiting their fate as the death toll skyrocketed. By the time it faded away in 1919, this pandemic had claimed over 50 million lives worldwide. In the U.S., it hit cities like Philadelphia hard. A parade intended to boost morale in September 1918 became a death march, infecting thousands. The streets were soon lined with corpses, families were torn apart, mourning loved ones who succumbed within days. The 1918 influenza was a brutal reminder of our frailty against nature's wrath. It was more than just a virus, it was a cataclysm that shook the world, forever altering our understanding of disease and death. In the summer of 2017, the sunny shores of New Smyrna Beach, Florida, transformed into a scene of horror as an outbreak of flesh-eating bacteria struck. Vibrio vulnificus, a terrifying bacterium lurking in warm coastal waters, claimed its first victim, a healthy man who had cut his foot while wading in the surf. Within days, his foot began to swell grotesquely, pain searing his body like molten lava. Doctors struggled to save him, but the bacteria advanced, eating away at his flesh and leaving him fighting for his life. The grim reality: he was not alone. Another victim, a woman who had enjoyed a day at the beach, noticed a strange rash on her leg. In mere hours, it escalated into a necrotizing infection. Surgeons raced against time, removing infected tissue, but the bacteria had already spread too far. While the media sensationalized the outbreak, the victims faced a cruel fate: amputations and long-lasting trauma. Vibrio vulnificus thrived, fed by the warm waters, claiming lives and spreading fear. As beachgoers learned the terrifying truth, they wondered, was a day of fun worth the risk of losing their flesh? The answers remain chillingly clear. In the summer of 1976, the remote villages of Sudan were plunged into a nightmare as the Ebola virus emerged, claiming lives and spreading chaos. The first recorded outbreak occurred in Nzara, near the border with the Central African Republic. The virus, transmitted through bodily fluids, unleashed its wrath upon unsuspecting villagers. In mere weeks, over 280 people fell victim, with a staggering 53% mortality rate. Victims experienced excruciating symptoms: high fever, relentless vomiting, and internal bleeding. The sight of blood seeping from every orifice left many in horror. Families watched helplessly as loved ones deteriorated. The local healthcare system was overwhelmed, struggling to contain the outbreak. Quarantine measures were hastily implemented, but fear spread faster than the virus itself. In the town of Yambuku, not far from Nzara, the death toll mounted as villagers succumbed one after another. As doctors rushed to confront the unknown, the virus seemed indifferent to their efforts, laughing in the face of humanity. Ultimately, the 1976 Ebola outbreak not only devastated lives, but left an indelible mark on the history of infectious diseases, a grim reminder of nature's lethal arsenal. In August 2020, the sleepy village of Kumbhalgarh, India, became the epicenter of a rabies outbreak that sent shockwaves through the community. It started when a local farmer, Rajesh, was bitten by a stray dog while working in the fields. Ignoring the traditional warnings about rabies, Rajesh believed he was immune to superstition. Days later, his behavior spiraled into madness. He became aggressive, biting anyone who approached, his body racked with seizures. The symptoms of rabies took hold: hallucinations, paralysis, and a fear of water that turned him into a terrifying specter of the man he once was. Soon Rajesh was dead, but the horror didn't end there. His family, who had been in close contact, began exhibiting symptoms. Within weeks, 3 more villagers succumbed to the virus, creating a chilling cycle of infection. The local health authorities were overwhelmed. Their pleas for vaccines met with delays. This grotesque outbreak highlighted the fragility of life, as rural communities battled both a deadly virus and a lack of resources. Rabies claimed lives brutally, turning a tranquil village into a scene of chaos and fear, leaving behind a haunting reminder of nature's deadly power.
On July 27, 1967, a satellite crash-landed in the desolate landscape of Arizona, unleashing a catastrophic event that would lead to the discovery of a deadly extraterrestrial microorganism. Dubbed the Andromeda strain, this pathogen was unlike anything ever seen on Earth. The satellite, part of a secret military project, had returned from deep space, carrying with it a contagion that defied all known biology. Following the crash, a small team of scientists was dispatched to investigate the site. What they found was horrifying. The local residents had been decimated in mere hours, their bodies lifeless and grotesquely twisted. The pathogen thrived on human tissue, multiplying rapidly and causing horrific necrosis. Each infected person became a walking time bomb, spreading the virus with every breath. As panic set in, the military quarantined the area, but it was too late. The strain showed an eerie intelligence, able to adapt and overcome any attempts at containment. Every attempt to study the strain led to more deaths, leaving behind a chilling reminder that humanity's greatest threat might come from the stars. This incident wasn't just a freak occurrence, it was a warning of what lurks beyond our atmosphere.
In December 2006, in the bustling city of Prague, a 33-year-old man named John became the unwilling host to a sinister parasite, Toxoplasma gondii. This microscopic monster, often found in cat feces, invaded his brain like an uninvited guest. At first, Jan felt a strange lethargy, but soon he began to experience bizarre behavioral changes. Friends reported that he acted recklessly, showing manic impulses, driving at insane speeds, ignoring traffic lights, and even contemplating dangerous stunts. Little did he know, his mind was under siege. Toxoplasma hijacks the host's brain, altering their personality, creating an irresistible urge for risk. Jan's mental state deteriorated rapidly. He developed severe paranoia, convinced that everyone was out to get him. His delusions spiraled out of control, leading to a tragic confrontation with the authorities. In a moment of pure desperation and psychosis, Jan barricaded himself in his apartment, refusing to come out. When police finally broke down the door, they found him muttering incoherently, a shell of his former self. Toxoplasmosis had turned him into a living nightmare, illustrating the dangerous power of a tiny parasite that can wreak havoc from behind the scenes. The consequences were deadly.
In March 2014, a deadly outbreak of Ebola erupted in Guinea, West Africa, quickly spreading to Liberia and Sierra Leone. The virus, a gruesome killer, sent shockwaves through the region. Patients experienced fever, severe headaches, and shocking blood loss as their bodies turned into battlegrounds. The mortality rate soared to a staggering 90%. Imagine being the victim. You're drowning in your own blood, organs fail, and you become a mere shadow of your former self. Health workers, heroic yet tragically exposed, became infected while trying to save lives. Hospitals turned into horror zones, brimming with the sick and dying. Quarantine measures were enforced, but the virus laughed in the face of containment. Families were torn apart, shunned, and stigmatized. Those who dared to care for the infected often met the same fate. The world watched in horror as the death toll climbed, reaching over 11,000. Black humor surfaced as the situation grew more dire. Jokes about Ebola became a coping mechanism amid the chaos. Yet there was nothing funny about the devastation left in the virus's wake. The 2014 Ebola outbreak was a grim reminder of nature's ferocity and humanity's vulnerability. In early July 2024, in a small town in Texas, a chilling incident unfolded as Mark, a 32-year-old wildlife photographer, unwittingly became host to a deadly parasite, Toxoplasma gondii. This insidious protozoan, often associated with cats, found its way into Mark's life after he cleaned a litter box without proper precautions. What started as mild flu-like symptoms spiraled into a nightmarish reality. Soon his body was a battleground, under siege by the relentless parasite. His vision blurred, hallucinations plagued his mind, and fatigue gripped his body like a vice. Friends noted his erratic behavior and deepening paranoia, yet Mark brushed it off as stress. But the parasite was ruthless, targeting his brain, causing inflammation and chaos. Days turned into a surreal hellscape. He became a mere shell of his former self, and soon he was hospitalized. Doctors fought valiantly, but ultimately lost the battle. Toxoplasmosis claimed another victim, leaving behind a haunting reminder of how a simple act could lead to catastrophic consequences. Mark's tragic story highlights the lurking dangers of seemingly innocuous interactions with nature. In 2012, in a remote village in South Sudan, a horrifying ordeal began when a 25-year-old man named Yahya succumbed to the wrath of a malicious parasite, the guinea worm, or Dracunculus medinensis. He unknowingly drank from a water source contaminated with tiny water fleas, the unwitting hosts of the larvae. Days turned into weeks, and as the larvae matured, they invaded his body, seeking a soft escape. The horror began when Yahya felt excruciating pain, a burning sensation creeping along his leg. Swelling and blistering ensued as the worm, up to 3 feet long, emerged through his skin, leaving a ghastly exit wound. Picture this: Yahya, writhing in agony, trying every remedy, but nothing could alleviate this slow, torturous extraction. Each day, the parasite inched out, a nightmare manifesting under his skin, with pus and blood seeping through the wound. The locals gathered, some in morbid curiosity, others to offer misguided help. As the worm finally emerged, the grotesque spectacle would haunt the village. Yahya's health deteriorated, his fate sealed by this insidious creature. In the end, this gruesome saga serves as a chilling reminder of nature's darkest side. In the summer of 2013, in a small town in Florida, a man named Dave was enjoying a relaxing day at the lake. Unbeknownst to him, a tiny, deadly parasite named Leptospora was lurking in the water, ready to unleash chaos. Just days later, Dave began to experience flu-like symptoms: fever, chills, and muscle aches. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just a bug. But this was no ordinary infection. The parasite invaded his bloodstream, targeting his organs and wreaking havoc. As days turned into weeks, Dave's health took a nosedive. He developed jaundice, his skin turning a sickly shade of yellow as his liver struggled to cope with the relentless attack. His body became a battleground, the parasite causing internal bleeding that transformed simple bruises into grotesque, blackened patches. Friends who once laughed with him were now horrified as he battled debilitating pain and weight loss. In the end, Dave succumbed to multiple organ failure, his life snuffed out by a microscopic foe. The irony? A simple swim turned into a death sentence, reminding us that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones we can't even see. A chilling reminder of nature's dark side.